Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another review video here on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Sarah Brooks' The Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands. There's no intro music, I don't know why I pause every time. Some quick disclaimers before we start. First, I was sent a digital review copy of this book by the publisher. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books except my patrons, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about the book as a whole. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video. Come back when you've read it, we'll talk then. I'll also link the story graphic for the book down below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. An additional quick disclaimer is that I read this in January of 2024. I'm filming this in January 2024 based on all the information that is out here now. The book is not out till June. This video will not go up for everybody until around about then. So there may be more information, there may be changes to different things going on before then. I'm just talking about the copy of the book that I personally read. This is Yorkshire-based author Sarah Brooks' debut. I am shocked and awed that it is a debut novel, but it is. It is coming out on the 20th of June 2024, assuming none of the pub dates change. That is the UK release date. I would describe it as a fantasy, historical, horror adjacent novel. It is not a full-on horror novel. I think it still firmly sits in fantasy, but it does have some horror elements to the story, which we're going to talk about now. We're at the end of the 19th century and passengers are boarding the Trans-Siberian Express, a train that is designed to take these passengers over to Russia. They are on an impenetrable train designed to withstand the dangerous and deadly wastelands that lie between Russia and China. A set of curious passengers and train workers board, but will they be the same people when they get off at the other side? If they get there at all. I said it's horror adjacent. I would describe this as sort of a survival horror story meeting a historical fantasy book. There is this real sense of claustrophobia and general threat in the book that really reminded me of a lot of classic sci-fi books, sort of things like, I'm trying to think of a good example, what's the one with the murder mystery on Mars? That one. But this idea of having to be in a completely sealed vessel, the idea of people potentially looking out the window too long and going mad, one of the things that it really reminds me of, and I think a lot of people will bring up, is a particular episode of Doctor Who called Midnight, which if you've seen it, you'll understand the kind of vibes this is bringing, and if you haven't seen it, you should go and watch it because it's a phenomenal episode of television. But it's very much this idea of the threat of the wastelands. It is only through the human determination and the technology that they are able to travel through here, and that is very fallible. Coupling that general threat with the mysteries that are happening within the story, it definitely feels like a very horror adjacent book to me. If you like that idea of threat, if you like that tense kind of writing, this is definitely a story for you. There are also some sort of body horror adjacent elements to the story. It's not full body horror to the point where I would be saying that's a full content warning, but there are some moments that definitely lean into some of those body horror tropes, for sure. Setting aside the horror aspect, let's look at these characters, because I really liked the concept for the book where we follow different characters and passengers on this train. Not all of them are paying passengers, some of them are people who work on the train, and they all have different access to different places and are being told different things by different people and have a different purpose and goal and relationship. It almost felt kind of D&D party-esque, not in terms of we have to fight an ogre or anything, but in terms of everybody having very unique backstory and reason for being there and having to occasionally work together to do things. I would say the majority of the stories do sort of exist in isolation and you follow the characters through, but it all comes together in a very cohesive and coordinated way. It feels like a really good broad selection of points of view as well. I didn't feel like there was anyone who was incredibly irritating or there was no one I wanted to skim over. All of the characters I found very fascinating. I thought they were really well written and distinct from one another, which is always one of the things I look for. There's nothing worse than a multiple point of view book where all the points of view feel the same, especially when you're in one location and quite often in one train car. How are you differentiating the voices of the characters? Sarah Brooks does it really well. I have a feeling the audiobook for this would be very good, but I have no idea how they've actually produced it. The writing itself is lovely. It's very atmospheric. Those horror moments are written very well. The overall sentence structure and pacing and the feel of the novel as a whole is very beautiful. I think it gets a little bit wordy. That's not something I mind too much. I like a little bit of floweriness, particularly towards the end of the book. It gets a little bit more abstract, but I liked that because I think it ties into this idea of the wastelands as something that we don't really understand and that has a menacing aspect to it that feels very otherworldly despite being of the world. I've put in my notes, there's something about the writing that feels very familiar in a lot of ways. It feels like a lot of different media things and other books and ideas and snippets of tropes and ideas. I've said tropes and ideas too much. Snippets of other works, snippets of familiarity, but all combined in such a way that it feels very fresh as a book as well. I haven't got a direct parallel to this. I can't say, oh, this book is just trying to be this book, because it feels so different to me. Some things to bear in mind if you are planning on reading this. I would say look up the content warnings. I personally have a lot of problems with insect-based things, and that does come up a little bit in this. Not so much that it bothered me, not so much that it made me put the book down, but any book that has a slight horror aspect to it, it's worth looking them up ahead of time if that's something that affects you. I also think, much like a historical train, it is a little bit slow to start. There is a lot to set up. There's a lot that is approached through a show don't tell attitude. The characters have a lot of familiarity with the ideas behind the Wasteland, and obviously you as a reader do not yet have that. So you just have to let the start of the book take you. It will all start to make sense, I promise. In terms of other things that I feel were similar to this, I don't have a direct link in with anything, as I say, other than that episode of Doctor Who, but that's not a great book recommendation. It's sort of got something Night Circus about it, something a little bit Night Circus but turned on its head, and a much more darker element to it than that. Also, Piranesi by Suzanne Clark, is a really good example, I think, especially for that mystery that gets developed throughout the book and the general tone and sense of unease that you get through the book. I think that's a good comparison. I've also had Babel on this list. I think it came up in a quote or someone saying this book was for people who like, only really in the historical fantasy aspect to it, but I thought it worth mentioning because clearly someone else found that connection, even if I didn't. Overall, I had a fantastic experience reading this book, to the point where I had multiple review copies on the go, and usually I try and force myself to read whichever ones are coming out first. The fact that this doesn't come out until June and I prioritised finishing it in January should give you an indication of how engrossed I was in the story. I just found it really, not to make another travelling pun, but it really carried me through and I liked it a lot. I think the characters, the plot, the setting, all fantastic. I'm really excited to see whatever Sarah Brooks does next. I think she's definitely going to be an author to watch. And I'm looking forward to more people being able to read this. Hopefully by the time this video comes out, more friends of mine will have picked it up because yeah, I had a great, wonderful time. Have you read The Cautious Traveller's Guide to the Wastelands? Do you have plans to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. And I will link the story graph for the book down below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warsings.